Well, everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Hey, everybody, Cantonese Cat here. I wonder if 4 weeks ago somebody was telling you that, hey, the Chinese market may be forming a base and that things would probably end up going up on the short term. I wonder if anybody told you that a few weeks ago before it happened. Wait, I did. I told you exactly that about 4 weeks ago. And it got like really no views. Usually my video averaged around like 500 to 1,000 views. It really got no views at all. Nobody really cared. And I think that was probably a bottoming signal. I wonder if anybody was telling you about 4 months ago, whenever the Hang Seng was, doing pretty well about a few months ago, where everybody got really super excited about Chinese stocks. I wonder if anybody have told you a few months ago to be short-term cautious because I think things are probably going to end up dropping down from there. And also long-term cautious, I'm talking about the next, decade or so, but medium term over the next 6 to 12 or even 18 months to be bullish. I wonder if anybody told you about that. Oh, I did. I told you that about 4 months ago. And I don't think people really enjoy that video all that much because I was kind of showing some bearishness to it. But yeah, I think it was appropriate because it kind of just went down and sideways for about 4 months until the video that I just posted a few weeks ago, right? That was forming a base, and I think it was going to have some pretty important implications to the market. I was a little bit more bearish about 7 months ago. I just didn't think the Chinese market was ready, even though it was starting to have like a little bit of lick up. I just didn't think that it was quite ready quite just yet. So I made a video about it. Didn't do very well. I was also talking about how I think the Chinese market was doing pretty decent a couple months ago for longer term, and how I think Tesla is going to be positively affected by it. So I'm just telling you, like sometimes I make these videos. A lot of times I'm not really going for views. I mostly just want to talk about what I want to talk about. Sometimes I do, but like a lot of times I just don't really care. The reason why I was a little bit more cautious a few months ago was this is the Hang Seng Index. The Hang Seng Index is based in Hong Kong, but pretty much all the big Chinese stocks are being listed here. Now, the whole thing about the Hang Seng Index is that it's been on a downtrend for years now. And this is the Bollinger Band. I'm looking at the 20-month moving average, which is the orange line here. And as you can see, as it was negative sloping, the bear trend was still intact. And you got rejected here, and you also got rejected here, even as it was trying to turn flat here a little bit. But when it's turned flat, we have a much better chance for you to really flip the 20-month moving average potentially from resistance to support. And we tested it for several months, and we finally was able to break above, right? What does this look like here? It looks like an Adam and Eve bottom. How does an Adam and Eve bottom form? It usually is formed because you have an incredibly parabolic downtrend. You found support as some critical support, and you end up having a balance and you end up retracing back to the mean, right? Which is the 20-month moving average right here. But because the mean is still really negative sloping, usually you end up getting rejected here, forming an Adam bottom. And you're going to need a little bit of an Eve bottom here as well to form a double bottom for you to be able to turn some of these technicals from more bearish here to more bullish here. So this whole Eve bottom has lasted for close to 2 years. This is how incredibly brutal this has been. A lot of people have been grinded through this Eve bottom, and a lot of people already exited the Chinese market. Like those that have remained are either lying to you or they really have had a lot of conviction and they really earned this green candle over here so far for the month, right? And I do think that on a greater scheme of things, we are having a trend change because the 20-month moving average is really truly flipping from negative to positive. And because this big giant green candle is very convincingly getting it back above on the upper part of the Bollinger Band. And because the Bollinger Band is now starting to squeeze here a little bit, which tells me maybe a little bit of a trend change is coming. Last time you have something like this happen, I guess this is a little bit of like a false, breakout from 2020, 2021. A lot of people remember Chinese stock doing very, very well during this period of time. But it was just forming a little bit of a lower high, if you will, compared to where it was around January 2018. So what happened exactly? Why did the Hang Seng Index peaked at around 2018? Why is that? Well, taking into consideration here, first thing first, you started to really have a lot of geopolitical tension whenever President Trump has come to office. It was talking tough, and actually eventually was able to actually impose a lot of tariffs against Chinese goods, and that really has had a pretty drastically, significantly impact to the Chinese economy. The thing about it, you think that, with inflation being sky high, with everything else, being an issue, you would think that President Biden would, easing up those tariffs, but no, he didn't. He kept them, and it's been hitting the Chinese economy very hard. A lot of factories have been not able to meet their margins, and they have to go to other places. They have to go to Southeast Asia. They have to go to India. They have to go to other places to try to reestablish their factories, and that really has taken a hit for the Chinese economy. Together with COVID, like their COVID shutdown has been lasting for a lot longer, and their economic activity has just not really been kicking off very well until recently, over the last couple of years really. So you talk about this big giant downtrend and the whole Adam Eve bottom over here. I am a little bit more concerned about the Chinese economy moving forward in a longer term. There's a lot of reasons for that. Just look at some of the indicators here. It really does tell me that there are reasons to potentially get a little bit more worried, because right now, even if price goes up, it might be going up on a little bit of a bearish divergence here, and you are getting a little bit of a trend exhaustion, if you will. You can see that currently there is a little bit of a concern when it comes to just Chinese stock. Just looking at the RSI, just look really, really exhausted. Now, do I think the Chinese stock's probably going to do pretty well? Do I think that it's probably going to go up to maybe even like the 28,000s or something like that, insane, over the next 12 to 18 months? And there's a lot of gains potentially to be made in the medium term. I say like maybe 6, 12, 18 months. I can totally see that. And I can also see this as a 3-month chart. So each candle represents a 3-month, candle. And I can see that. I just think that this trend line over here is probably going to end up getting broken. The RSI is probably going to end up getting broken here. It's probably going to end up pushing up a lot higher. But whenever it gets up to here, even gets up to like the 60s or 70s, price would probably still be hovering around 26,000, 28,000, somewhere around there. And you're going to end up having a lot of like bearish diversions that would need to work up after this breakout. I think this breakout is going to happen. I do think that we're probably going to end up getting rejected here in the short term. The reason why I say that is because the upper Bollinger Band here on monthly is already kind of getting close to getting hit. So that's going to serve as, a resistance there. If you look at the Ichimoku cloud, I guess there's still some more room to go up, all the way potentially up to the 23,000s. Or you can just end up cooling down this move and kind of go sideways and hit the bottom of the cloud over here and end up hovering around before pushing up further. I do think that it's probably going to go up and push through the cloud this cycle. But how high is it going to go on bearish divergence? I don't know. Just looking at the monthly chart though, we did end up having a RSI breakout, and it's pretty convincing. Like whenever you see this RSI breakout, like you know that price is going to go up higher over time, but I just think that it was going to correct. I didn't know how far it's going to go down, but you can see that it was kind of stuck inside the range here between the tank and the kitchen here for about 4 months straight, and was able to finally break through about the kitchen, right? So next level of resistance is going to be the cloud here, depending on where it hits. Maybe anywhere from like, I don't think it's going to hit like 23,000 this month. Like there's no way that it would do that. Next month could hit up to 22,000, get rejected, or it can just kind of go hovering sideways because the Bollinger Band on the monthly still hasn't expanded. Can it just end up getting hovering sideways over here, hit the bottom of the cloud over here, and then try and hover underneath the bottom of the cloud over here before pushing through in sometime around like maybe Q2 of 2025. I think that's entirely a possible scenario, right? But with that said, you are getting close to resistance here, so I think there's some reasons to be a little bit more cautious here in the short term. I do think that things are looking a lot more bullish here on the medium term. The Adam and Eve butt line, if you will, waistline, if you will, the double bottom over here, it's around 22 to 23,000, so I think that's probably going to end up hitting, and that's probably going to be a pretty strong resistance level. And I do think that that's going to get pushed through sometime in 2025. I just don't know when exactly that's going to be. Once it gets pushed through, I do think some of the higher targets up here would be potentially end up being met. And I do think that this line over here would probably be some pretty strong potential resistance. So I think that there's potential for the Hang Seng Index to hit somewhere around 28,000. And there is a potential that that might be the top of the cycle here. And whenever that would be, I do not know. If it ends up hitting 2026, 2027, I do think that that's not bad. If it breaks above this trend line, then you're talking about maybe making a little bit of a higher high here, but I think that that would probably end up being a little bit more exhausted, and that would probably be maybe an area to potentially consider exiting, just because everybody was really super bullish around 2020, 2021 on Chinese stocks, and they just end up making a lower high. There are reasons to be cautious here, but we are breaking above that trend line here, just so you know. So yeah, lots of money to be made if you want to be in this, but I would think that's probably more of a trade rather than investment for long term, because I do think that there's a lot of similarity between where China is now and where Japan was back in about 20, 30, 40 years ago. In around the 80s, there's a huge run up of the Japanese stock market. This is a monthly chart with the Nikkei index. And you hear about the bubble, like they really had a big giant bubble that just kind of ran up like crazy, right? And because of this bubble, the Japanese economy has done absolutely nothing. And their stock market has just kind of gone down and sideways for really talking about like 3 to 3.5 decades. I do think that the Chinese economy, there's a potential for it to have something similar. And we've already experienced about a whole decade and a half of it already. I do worry that the Chinese economy is not going to do very well because of a couple of things. Number one is they just, nobody wants to have kids anymore. For economies to grow, they have to have, population growth usually to kind of sustain that. They just don't have that. Number two is that I think the tariffs from the US has really economically hit China really, really hard. And I don't think that they'll be able to make their margin that easily. I just think there's going to be a lot of things that are just not going to be under the Chinese economy's or Chinese government's control in terms of stimulation. They can stimulate the economy, print money, which is what Japan's been doing really over the last 3.5 decades, because there's tremendous deflation. There's not really any concern for inflation at all. So the Japanese just been printing money to kind of keep their economic system afloat. I think China might end up doing that potentially over the next couple of decades or so. The Japanese stock market was run on a bubble on the stock market. The Chinese economy was run on a bubble on the housing market. I really think that a lot of the housing market has been greatly leveraged. They're basically going through something very similar to the great financial crisis that the United States has experienced. They just have a huge housing bubble, and right now is being deleveraged. And the deleveraging can happen for quite some time. Now, it doesn't mean that the Chinese economy has to go down in a short term. No, I actually think that there's probably another leg up. And I just kind of show you what my target for the Hang Seng Index is. So yeah, I actually think the Chinese economy is probably going to do pretty poorly, maybe for the foreseeable future in the next 10 years, perhaps even longer. But the stock market for the Chinese the stock market with the Hang Seng Index, it does look like it wants to break out and maybe form a little bit of a lower high here, which is a pretty significant amount of gain. If you talk about the Hang Seng Index going from the current level going to 2,800, you're talking about 30 to 40% gain from here. And a lot of the Chinese stocks are going to make a lot more higher beta gains from that as well, right? I just want to make sure that you know what I'm thinking, rather than just saying, oh, the Chinese stocks are bearish, Chinese stocks are bullish. You have to put it in context here. Now, looking at one of the major Chinese stocks that a lot of people do hold, which is Alibaba. Is Alibaba looking bullish over the next 12 to 18 months? The answer is yes. How is it looking over the next few weeks? Well, you are outside the upper Bollinger Band here on the monthly. I'm very cautious about that. Now, that's what happens whenever things break resistance. You see how the 20-month moving average is serving as resistance for so long. And I was saying that it was forming a base. I do think that's going to end up breaking out. And whenever it ends up breaking out, all it takes just 1 month of insanity for it to just kind of go up on like 30%, which is exactly what this month has done so far. Now, whenever it's doing something like that, I don't want to chase something like this, because right now you're really hitting some pretty critical resistance at the upper Bollinger Band here on the monthly line. Granted, it can keep going up on the upper Bollinger Band, don't get me wrong, right? But it's hitting resistance right now. I just hate to chase. And then another thing too, if you look at Ichimoku, it's able to flip the Tenkan and Kijun from resistance to support. And right now we're getting a little bit of a potentially bullish cross over here too, even on Tenkan and Kijun. Perhaps later on, maybe next month, we might get a little bit of a bullish cross here, right? Even though we are hitting some upper Bollinger Band resistance here, I think there's a potential for price to keep going up to the cloud. I think that's entirely possible. If it ends up hitting the cloud, you're talking about the 140s, maybe sometime around Q2, or maybe 130s down here, maybe Q1, Q2 of 25, I think it's entirely possible. Or you can break through inside the cloud, back test bottom cloud, and go a lot higher. But do I think it's gonna hit like this target up here around 300? I don't know. I do think that it's got a lot of licks, and I do think that the cycle would probably bring us at least to the top of the cloud here over the next 12 to 18 months, which is a lot of gains to be had. I'm thinking Baba can potentially double over here over the next like 12 to 18 months, maybe getting close to about 200 or 190 to be precise, right? But do I think that it's just going to end up just pushing through from here on out? No, I think you're at resistance here. You are at a lot of different kinds of resistance here. There's a little bit of a trend line that you're kind of hitting over here too, right? So I would be a little bit more cautious when it comes to Baba, but I am more bullish now over the next 12 to 18 months. I do think that breakout has happened, and over the next 12 to 18 months, it's probably going to keep going. But over a short term, over the next month or two or three, there's a potential for Baba to kind of correct sideways, and it could be extremely painful for people who end up buying the top of this candle over here. Or it may not. It can just keep going up, extending. I'm just showing you that I think the risk level has significantly elevated currently. And if you're buying here, just be prepared that, hey, you're going to have maybe potentially some short-term pain over the next month or three. But I think you're going to have some, relatively long, medium-term gain here over the next 12 to 18 months. That's kind of what I think, right? Even looking at the weekly chart here, if you look at the Ichimoku cloud, like it's a very big breakout. Like there's no doubt that this is, going to keep going up higher over time, but it might end up doing a lot of, kind of back testing, things like that. But just look at how overextended the weekly chart is, right? Look, you see how overextended over here, we end up getting punished for it, right? You see how overextended over here, and we end up keeping going up, but we end up getting punished for it later, right? So just be a little bit careful, but I do think that we are forming higher high here compared to here, and we are forming higher lows. So whenever it has a higher low, which could bring us all the way potentially even back down to like 100 or even back down to 90, I think those are entirely possible. Does it have to? No, right? But I don't know exactly what's going to happen now that it's broke up, and I don't know exactly what's going to happen in the short term. But look at this candle over here too. Like, I cannot be that bearish on Baba because you're having a big giant Marubozu candle which has no wicks at all. Most likely it's going to want to have some bullish continuation. Most likely it's going to keep on getting overextended even further over the next coming weeks. But I think at some point over the next month to three, you are going to have some correction either through time or through price. And some of the support level I'm showing is like 100. If that doesn't hold, it's going to be around 90. And that's kind of what I think. Now, I'm going to try to draw a little bit of a Gann chart here because I can. And I'm going to use this, and I haven't drawn this, I'm doing it kind of live right now. Not live, I mean it's a recorded video, but you see what I'm saying. If I do a Gann chart, if I do a multiple of 45, which is going to be 360, is going to be the duration. So let's go ahead to the 360 here, and on here I'm going to change the factor to 1, which is generally how you would like to look at things, right? So looking at the Alibaba chart here on the monthly, you can see that the Gann chart here is showing you some pretty interesting market symmetry. It's basically, it looks like it was just starting out from here, pushing through arc here, broke through an arc here like this butter, went up here to the arc, got rejected here, and upper arc came back down, back tested, pushed through this arc, went up there, got rejected here in the top arc. And the next thing you know, ever since 2020, November 2020, Alibaba has kind of broken arc after arc after arc, and even tried to make a little bit of a lower low here for its history, but was not able to. Found support. Where did it end up getting up to? Well, it ended up getting up to this arc up here, the blue arc, right? Getting rejected. Where did it end up going? It ended up going down here to the orange arc right here, and then we've just been kind of back testing orange arc here, forming a little bit of an Eve bottom. And we found back support from the angle, and once we broke through the angle, where's the resistance going to be? It's going to be right here at this arc over here. Is it going to just break through here at resistance? I don't know. Look at how strong resistance it was for the last couple of years, right? So I think there are reasons to be a little bit more cautious. I think there are reasons to think that, hey, maybe price will retrace back to 100, maybe price will retrace back to like 95, 90 before going up higher. But if it keeps on pushing up, like it could potentially hit up to like the 120, 125 zone over here. And that would also be some pretty strong resistance here too. Ultimately, I think that Alibaba, if you look at the Ichimoku cloud, you see how confluent zone this horizontal line over here is, and you see how I think like 190 is probably going to be where the end of the cycle is going to be over the next couple of years. You see why I say that, right? And it could go up higher. It can even go up to this arc over here where it got rejected over here in 2020. It's entirely possible. But I just want to show you have a lot of resistance to push through before you even get up to like the 250s. A lot of resistance to push through. And you already have a little bit of too much of an energy being spent here as well, right? Also, just looking at the volume. So far, this is a pretty decent volume. I mean, the week is not over. It's Friday. We're probably going to end up having this uptrend on like increased volume here, which is a good sign. I do think that we're probably hitting some pretty critical resistance here on multiple fronts. Again, just looking at the Bollinger Band, like that you're at resistance up here. So be cautious. But if you want to buy, if you are patient, you want to wait for the next 12 to 18 months to take profit, I guess is okay, and not financial advice, but just trying to show you what I'm seeing here. So that's my Alibaba chart. Matter of fact, this looks so good that I'm going to save it for later. I'm going to post it. Yeah, this is pretty amazing actually how the candle works. Thank you, the great Nasby. The other charts to look at, I think a lot of these Chinese stocks are looking very similar. Looking just briefly going through and looking at the 20. Baidu is not hitting the 20 yet. Baba is, right? Baidu is not. So Baidu is a little bit of a falling knife still. And you can potentially have price go up by Baidu going up to like 116. And that's still a pretty significant gain here, but I expect a little bit more of a correction once it hits up there, right? JD has made a very incredible move here as well. It pushed through the 20-month moving average. It's very, very strong resistance here for quite some time. You flip it from resistance to support now. Now, the problem with JD is that the 20-month moving average is still very negative sloping. So I don't think it's going to be very good support at all. I think JD has some room to kind of potentially run up to maybe like the 40s. And you can potentially hit there and get rejected. And it might end up coming back down here. Hopefully with price kind of going up here through time, you're able to flatten the 20-month moving average and actually flip from resistance to support, because right now it's still too negatively sloping for my liking. I don't like it, right? And guess what? JD's also hitting a very important volume shelf support, resistance over here around 40, right? I do think it's probably going to end up breaking through maybe the top of the volume shelf over here around 45 and getting rejected. Hopefully it corrects enough through time and maybe a little bit through price for you to flip the 20 from resistance to support. We'll see. But JD, I'm a little bit more cautious. PDD, Pinduoduo, it's not a bad looking chart. I think you have a lot of deleverage that happened, and it basically just hit this volume shelf here, found supported it perfectly. Right now you have a bullish engulfing candle. Where is it going to go? Probably going to hit the top of the volume shelf over here around the 140s, right? It might probably end up getting rejected up here just because a lot of energy has been exhausted. This big giant red candle here is on high volume, so far the volume is not really matching that with bullish engulfing. So we're probably not necessarily going to just push up from here. I think we might end up having some sideways action here a little bit. Maybe find support around here, around the 120s, before some bullish continuation moving forward. But yeah, even Pinduoduo is not bad looking. It's just doing what it needs to do to kind of correct. It was a little bit exhausted on this bull trend, and it did what it had to do, right? And another chart I've been very, very bullish on is Tencent. Tencent looks great, right? It break through the rising 20, and it break through this Adam and Eve bottom over here. Right now it's above. Where is it at? Well, it's at the volume shelf up here. So we're at resistance for Tencent. I think that's probably going to hit maybe around like the 70s or 80s on this cycle. But again, you have to be a little bit more cautious right now because things are a little bit overextended on the upper Bollinger Band, and things are hitting, some resistance levels up here, right? Could it come back test down to like the 40s, high 40s, or even like the low 50s? I think it's entirely possible. But these charts are looking pretty decent. Now, Vivian was asking me about Futu. What do I think about Futu? I think it's still an uptrend. I think it's still respecting this this pitchfork over here. I think it's still probably going to go higher. But again, just like all the other stock, you're hitting a volume shelf up here pretty soon, and you're kind of a little bit way outside upper Bollinger Band. It's kind of amazing. Kind of came back down, back test a rising 20-month moving average, doesn't it? The other thing that's amazing about this is that this month candle is so impulsive. It ends up broadening out the Bollinger Band, and there's increasing volume here. I think Futu is going to be one of the darlings of the next 12 to 18 months. I think it can potentially hit up to the 150s, and that would be double from here. Do I think it's going to make an all-time high? I do not know, right? But this looks like it's one of the darlings of these Chinese stocks here. So that's something to pay attention to. I think this is one of the more bullish ones. Now, let's talk about the EV stocks here. You want to talk about EV stock going a little further than NEO. And NEO is still on a downtrend, although it does look like this green candle so far is on really good volume. It does look like we are maybe having a little bit of flattening on the 20-month moving average, although I still don't trust it. I still think that probably going to reject it here, maybe come back down here to like the $5 or $6 zone, found support, and then bounce up higher over time, but you're probably going to still need another half a year at least to kind of flatten out the 20-month moving average before I would even feel that NEO has a chance for developing a little bit more of a bull trend. Just look at how much of a falling knife it is, right? But I do like this month's candle, and I do think that it's probably going to end up going sideways up here. If you end up buying down here around like $3.50, congratulations. I did think that it's going to end up retracing back to the mean here. When I was talking about NEO for the last few months, I said long term I'm still not convinced. But if you want to buy down here, if it retraces back to the mean, that's a lot of gains to be made. That's what I said, right? And that exactly is kind of what's playing out. But do I want to invest in NEO right now? No. I need some kind of confirmation because we're getting close to resistance up here. Is it maybe another dollar to go before you're going to hit some pretty major resistance, right? So NEO is a little bit more concerning. Now, you're talking about another one that people talk about a lot, which is actually turning more positive now, is XPEV or XPeng, Xiaopeng, XPEV. It has currently flipped a negative sloping 20-month moving average into a flat 20-month moving average with this big giant green candle over here. And currently we're reclaiming the 20-month moving average. So this is one of the more bullish looking stocks actually. I actually do enjoy this look to it. And this does look a little bit more like a double bottom here as well. So actually, if you have to pick a Chinese EV stock, I think this is probably one of the better looking ones, Again, do I think that it's going to end up doing well overall? Do I think it's going to end up pushing like to all-time high, things like that? I do not know, but I'm getting more and more bullish by the way that this looks, right? I don't know whether or not this is something that I would want to get into though, just because if Chinese stocks do well, I think US stocks are also going to do pretty well, and Bitcoin is also going to do incredibly well as well. So I don't necessarily want to get into them. But another EV stock here, Li Auto, has just been doing nothing since its IPO. And I think this is still going to be underneath resistance. I think that there might be a little bit more meat to the bone, if you will, maybe another $4 before you hit resistance up here at the 20-month moving average. And it's probably going to get rejected here. I just don't see it pushing through immediately. But yeah, this is one of those trend that you're seeing here. Overall, again, I'm not changing my stance on Chinese stocks at all. I basically told you exactly what I thought was going to happen, and it's pretty much played out exactly how I thought it was going to play out. So anyway, if you enjoy my thoughts, please feel free to give me a like or whatever. I just want to make sure I let you know I'm not invested in Chinese stocks, but it's important to understand that the Chinese stocks are a window to Chinese liquidity, which is going to influence Bitcoin, and it's going to influence Tesla, and it's also going to influence the US stock market as well. So thank you so much for listening. I know this video is getting a little bit long here, but I just want to talk about these stocks here. Anyway, take care, bye.